Billionaire laughed at the black mother begging for a job, never imagining she would save his son's life. The rain hammered against the glass doors of Sterling Industries with the fury of a wounded sky. Patricia Williams stood outside, her worn coat soaked through, her resume protected beneath a plastic folder pressed against her chest like a shield. She had been standing there for 43 minutes, watching through the glass as receptionists glanced at her and looked away, as security guards whispered to each other, as well-dressed executives passed by without seeing her at all. She was invisible, and she knew why. Patricia was 52 years old, a black woman whose hands bore the calluses of 2 decades working as a nurse until the hospital closed, leaving her and 37 others unemployed. Her savings had run dry 3 months ago. Her daughter Maya needed medication that cost $200 a week. And this morning, the landlord had taped an eviction notice to her door, giving her 14 days to produce 3 months' back rent or lose the small apartment that had been their home for 8 years. This job, assistant coordinator at Sterling Industries, was her last hope. She had applied online twice, called 17 times, and finally decided to come in person, knowing that sometimes a face, a voice, a human presence could break through the cold machinery of corporate rejection. But not her face, not her voice, not today. When the glass door finally opened, it wasn't to welcome her. A young security guard, no more than 25, stepped out with an expression that mixed discomfort with practiced authority. "Ma'am, you need to leave. You're disturbing our clients." Patricia's throat tightened. "I'm here to speak with someone about the job posting. I have my resume, my references." "Ma'am, all applications must be submitted online. You can't just show up." "I did submit online. Twice. I called. No one responded. Please, I just need 5 minutes." "Ma'am." His voice grew harder. "I'm asking you nicely. Don't make me call the police." The words struck her like a physical blow. Police. For standing outside a building. For asking for work. For existing while desperate and black. Patricia's hands trembled, but not from the cold. From rage, from humiliation, from the crushing weight of a world that had decided, long before she arrived, that she didn't belong here. "I understand," she said quietly, her dignity intact even as tears burned behind her eyes. "I'm leaving." She turned, and that's when she saw him. Marcus Sterling stepped out of a sleek black car that cost more than Patricia would earn in 5 years. Tall, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost $3,000, he moved with the unconscious confidence of someone who had never been told no, never been invisible, never stood in the rain begging for a chance. Their eyes met for just a moment. Patricia saw something flicker across his face. Recognition of her humanity, perhaps, or simple curiosity about why a woman was standing in the rain outside his building. For one fragile second, she allowed herself to hope. "Mr. Sterling," she called out, her voice stronger than she felt. "Sir, I'm Patricia Williams. I applied for the assistant coordinator position. I have 20 years of experience in administration and patient care. I'm reliable, hardworking, and I just need someone to give me a chance." Marcus Sterling stopped, turned, looked at her fully, and then he laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh, which somehow made it worse. It was casual, dismissive, the laugh of someone swatting away a minor inconvenience. He didn't even speak to her directly. Instead, he turned to his assistant, a young man with slicked back hair who had emerged from the car behind him. "Jason, didn't we just upgrade security? Why are we still having this problem?" This problem. The words echoed in Patricia's mind like a death sentence. "I'll handle it, sir," Jason said smoothly, already pulling out his phone. Marcus Sterling walked past her without another glance, his expensive shoes clicking against the wet pavement, leaving Patricia standing in the rain like a piece of discarded trash. The security guard returned, this time with a supervisor. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises immediately, or we will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing." Patricia wanted to scream. She wanted to rage against the injustice of it all, against the casual cruelty of a man who probably spent more on lunch than she needed to save her home. But she had learned, through decades of navigating a world that saw her as less than, that rage would only confirm their worst assumptions about her. So instead, she lifted her chin, looked the supervisor directly in the eye, and said with quiet dignity, "I'm leaving, but I want you to remember something. Every person you dismiss, every face you don't see, every voice you silence, we're still here. We're still human. And someday, you're going to need us more than we need you." She turned and walked away, her resume still clutched to her chest, her hope drowning in the rain. What Patricia didn't see as she disappeared into the gray city streets was the small figure watching from a third-floor window. 7-year-old Christopher Sterling, Marcus Sterling's only son, pressed his pale face against the glass, his breathing labored, his small hand clutching an inhaler. The boy had witnessed everything. And unlike his father, Christopher had actually seen Patricia Williams. He had seen her courage, her dignity, her humanity. And in 3 days, when Christopher's life would hang by a thread, that moment of true seeing would become the difference between life and death. Patricia walked 12 blocks in the rain before her legs gave out. She collapsed onto a bus stop bench, her body shaking with exhaustion and despair. The plastic folder had protected her resume, but what did it matter now? She pulled out her phone, a cheap model, cracked screen barely holding a charge, and looked at the text message from her daughter. "Mom, when are you coming home? I don't feel good." Maya, 16 years old, diagnosed with juvenile diabetes at age 8. Smart, beautiful, dreaming of college despite everything stacked against her. The medication that kept her alive cost more than Patricia could afford, and she had been rationing it for weeks, telling herself it would be okay, just until she found work, just until things got better. But things weren't getting better. Patricia closed her eyes and did something she hadn't done in years. She prayed, not for wealth, not for revenge, just for one more chance. One door to open. One person to see her as human. "Please," she whispered into the rain. "Please, I'm trying so hard, I just need one break, just one." The universe, it seemed, wasn't listening. Or perhaps it was. Perhaps it was simply preparing a response that neither Patricia Williams nor Marcus Sterling could possibly anticipate. Because 72 hours from that moment, Marcus Sterling would be standing in a hospital corridor, watching his son fight for breath, surrounded by the best doctors money could buy, all of them helpless. And the only person who would know what to do, the only person who could save Christopher's life would be the woman he had laughed at in the rain, the woman he had called this problem, the woman whose humanity he had dismissed without a second thought. Patricia Williams didn't know it yet, but her prayer was about to be answered in the most unexpected way possible. Not through kindness, not through recognition, but through justice, divine, inescapable justice. Patricia made it home just as the rain turned into a downpour. The apartment building in the Bronx looked even more defeated than usual, its brick facade stained with decades of neglect, windows covered with makeshift repairs, the smell of mildew mixing with the scent of Mrs. Rodriguez's cooking from the 3rd floor. Home. For now. She climbed the 4 flights of stairs, the elevator had been broken for 6 months, and found Maya sitting at their small kitchen table, her homework spread out in front of her, her face pale and drawn. "Mom." Maya looked up, and Patricia saw immediately that something was wrong. Her daughter's hands were shaking slightly, a telltale sign that her blood sugar was unstable. "Baby, did you check your levels?" Patricia dropped her soaked coat and rushed to the medical kit they kept in the kitchen cabinet. "I'm fine, Mom. Did you get the job?" Patricia's silence was answer enough. Maya's face fell, but she tried to hide it, the way children do when they're trying to protect their parents from their own disappointment. "It's okay. Something else will come up. It always does." But they both knew that wasn't true. Not this time. Patricia tested Maya's blood sugar. Too high. She needed insulin, and they were down to 3 days' worth of supply. 3 days before Patricia would have to make the impossible choice: buy medication or pay rent, save her daughter's life or keep a roof over their heads. I'm going to figure this out, Patricia said, injecting the insulin with practiced efficiency. I promise you, baby, I'm going to figure this out. Maya nodded, but her eyes said what her mouth wouldn't. How? That night, Patricia sat at the same kitchen table, her laptop, a donated model from a church charity, glowing in the darkness. She applied to 17 more jobs, housekeeping positions, administrative assistant roles, retail work, anything that might provide immediate income. Her fingers flew over the keyboard with desperate efficiency. Name, Patricia Williams. Age, 52. Race, black. She never checked that box on applications anymore, having learned that doing so often meant automatic rejection. But her name gave it away. Her address gave it away. And if she somehow made it to an interview, her face would give it away. She wasn't naive. She knew what she was up against. At 2:37 a.m., she finally closed the laptop and allowed herself to cry. Silently, so Maya wouldn't hear. She cried for the injustice of it all, for 20 years of hard work erased by one hospital closure, for every door slammed in her face, for every laugh like Marcus Sterling's that echoed in her memory. But most of all, she cried because she was tired, so desperately, bone-deep tired. Please, God, she whispered into the darkness, show me the way. I can't do this alone anymore. Across the city, in a penthouse apartment that occupied the entire top floor of a luxury building overlooking Central Park, Marcus Sterling tucked his son into bed. Christopher looked especially fragile tonight, his small chest rising and falling with more effort than it should. The boy had been born with severe asthma, complicated by a rare condition that made him hypersensitive to environmental triggers. Marcus had spent millions on specialists, treatments, state-of-the-art air filtration systems. He had moved mountains to protect his son. Yet Christopher seemed to grow frailer with each passing year. Dad? Christopher's voice was small. Why were you mean to that lady today? Marcus froze, one hand on the bedroom door. What lady? The one outside your building, in the rain. She was asking for help and you laughed at her. Marcus felt a flicker of irritation. Christopher, that's complicated. That woman was trespassing. She can't just show up at my office demanding things. She wasn't demanding, she was asking. Christopher's blue eyes, so much like his late mother's, held an uncomfortable clarity. Mom always said we should help people who ask for help. The mention of his wife, dead now for 3 years from cancer, cut through Marcus like a blade. Sarah had been the kind person in their relationship, the one who donated to charities, who stopped to talk to homeless people, who saw humanity where Marcus saw only inconvenience. Your mother was... Marcus searched for words. Your mother was a good person. But the world doesn't work the way she thought it did. You can't help everyone. You can't save everyone. But you didn't even try to help that lady. You just laughed. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Christopher, you don't understand business. You don't understand how many people try to take advantage. I understand that she was cold and wet and sad, and you made her sadder. The boy's voice was steady, but tears gleamed in his eyes. I don't think Mom would be proud of that. The words struck Marcus with unexpected force. He stood there, frozen, unable to respond, the ghost of his wife's disappointment hanging in the air between them. Get some sleep, he finally managed. Tomorrow's a school day. He closed the door and leaned against it, his heart pounding with an emotion he couldn't quite name. Guilt? Anger? Grief? No. He pushed it away. Christopher was a child. He didn't understand the realities of running a billion-dollar company, of protecting oneself from the endless line of people wanting something, needing something, demanding something. Marcus poured himself a scotch, 30-year-old single malt, $300 a bottle, and stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering city. From up here, the people below were invisible, ant-like, easy to ignore, just like Patricia Williams. He took a long drink and pushed the memory away. 2 days passed. Patricia found work washing dishes at a diner, 12-hour shifts for minimum wage, cash under the table. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough, but it was something. She worked until her hands cracked and bled, until her back screamed in protest, until exhaustion became a physical presence she carried like a weight. Maya's medication ran out. Patricia stretched it, rationing doses, telling herself it would be okay for just a few more days, just until the first paycheck came through. Maya said she felt fine, but Patricia saw the signs, the fatigue, the increased thirst, the way her daughter moved more slowly, as if swimming through invisible water. "Just a few more days, baby," Patricia whispered, holding Maya close. "Just hold on for me." On the third day after the encounter with Marcus Sterling, Patricia was walking home from her shift at the diner, 2 a.m., the streets empty and cold, when she heard sirens. An ambulance screamed past, followed by 2 police cars, all heading toward the wealthy district across town. Patricia said a quick prayer for whoever needed help and kept walking. She had no way of knowing that the ambulance was racing toward Marcus Sterling's penthouse. She had no way of knowing that Christopher had collapsed during dinner, his breathing suddenly restricted, his lips turning blue, his small body convulsing as his father screamed for help. She had no way of knowing that in approximately 6 hours, she would walk past St. Catherine's Hospital on her way to pick up Maya's emergency medication from a charity clinic. She had no way of knowing that Marcus Sterling, standing in that hospital corridor watching his son fight for breath, was about to face the most devastating moment of his life. And she had no way of knowing that she, Patricia Williams, the woman he had laughed at, the woman he had dismissed as this problem, would be the only person in that hospital who could save Christopher's life. The universe was about to deliver its response to Patricia's prayer, not with mercy, with justice. Christopher Sterling lay in the pediatric intensive care unit of St. Catherine's Hospital, the best private medical facility in New York City. He was surrounded by machines that beeped and hissed, by doctors who whispered in concerned tones, by nurses who moved with practiced efficiency. But he was dying. His rare condition, hypereosinophilic syndrome combined with severe asthma, had triggered a cascade reaction that no one had anticipated. His airway was swelling shut. Standard treatments weren't working. The specialists were running out of options. Marcus Sterling stood outside the ICU, his expensive suit rumpled, his hair disheveled, his face a mask of barely controlled terror. He had called in every favor, contacted every specialist he knew, offered unlimited funds for experimental treatments. Nothing was working. "Mr. Sterling," Dr. Jameson, the chief of pediatric medicine, approached with the expression doctors wear when they're about to deliver devastating news. "We need to talk about next steps." "What next steps? You're telling me there are next steps?" Marcus grabbed the doctor's arm, his voice breaking. "He's 7 years old. There have to be next steps. We're doing everything we can, but his body isn't responding to conventional treatment. We've consulted with specialists in Boston, in Philadelphia. Everyone agrees that—" "Don't." Marcus's voice was dangerous. "Don't you dare tell me to prepare for the worst. Don't you dare tell me there's nothing more you can do. I'm Marcus Sterling. I can buy this entire hospital. I can fly in any doctor in the world. You will save my son." Dr. Jameson's expression softened with genuine sympathy. "Mr. Sterling, money can't fix everything. Sometimes medicine has limits. I'm so sorry." Marcus felt the world tilting beneath his feet. This couldn't be happening. Not to him. Not to Christopher. He had lost Sarah. He couldn't lose his son too. He wouldn't survive it. He stumbled to a chair in the waiting area, buried his face in his hands, and for the first time since his wife's funeral, Marcus Sterling broke down. All his wealth, all his power, all his influence, none of it mattered. None of it could save the one person who mattered more than anything else in the world. And in that moment of absolute desperation, Marcus Sterling finally understood what Patricia Williams had felt, standing in the rain outside his building. Helpless, invisible, human. Just another person begging the universe for mercy. Patricia Williams walked through the automatic doors of St. Catherine's Hospital at 6:47 a.m., exhausted from her overnight shift at the diner, but determined to reach the charity clinic on the 3rd floor before it opened at 7 a.m. They only accepted the first 20 patients each day, and she needed to be one of them. Maya's emergency insulin couldn't wait any longer. The hospital lobby was quiet at this hour, just a few nurses changing shifts, a janitor mopping the floors, and the ever-present hum of fluorescent lights. Patricia moved quickly toward the elevators, her worn sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. Then she heard it. A sound that made her freeze in her tracks. It came from down the hall near the pediatric wing, a desperate, gasping wheeze that Patricia recognized instantly. 20 years as a nurse had trained her ears to detect the specific quality of respiratory distress, and this sound was unmistakable. Someone was suffocating. Patricia's body moved before her mind could catch up. She ran toward the sound, her feet carrying her past the reception desk, past the staff-only signs, following the terrible wheezing to a private room where a small crowd had gathered. She pushed through the cluster of people, doctors, nurses, a security guard, and saw him. A small boy, no more than 7 or 8, his face turning blue, his body arching off the bed as he fought for air. Machines screamed their alarms. A doctor was attempting to intubate, but the boy's throat was too swollen. A nurse was preparing an emergency tracheotomy kit with shaking hands. And standing at the foot of the bed, completely helpless, was Marcus Sterling. Their eyes met. For one frozen moment, recognition flashed across his face. The woman from the rain. The woman he had laughed at. The woman he had called this problem. Patricia saw all of this in his eyes. The recognition, the shame, the desperate hope that somehow she might not remember him. But none of that mattered now. "Move," Patricia said, her voice cutting through the chaos with absolute authority. The doctor looked up, annoyed. "Ma'am, you can't be in here. That child has hypereosinophilic syndrome with acute laryngeal edema. Your standard intubation won't work because his trachea is collapsing from the inside. You're about to perform an emergency tracheotomy, which will kill him because the inflammation extends below the cricoid cartilage." Patricia moved to the bedside, her hands already reaching for the boy. "I said move." Dr. Jameson stared at her, stunned. "How do you—" "I was head nurse at Metropolitan General's Pediatric Intensive Care Unit for 12 years. I've seen this exact presentation 3 times. Twice the children died because we did exactly what you're about to do. The 3rd time, we tried something different, and she lived." Patricia was already examining Christopher, her experienced hands checking his pulse, his airway, his coloring. "You need to listen to me right now, or this child will be dead in 4 minutes. Marcus found his voice. "Do what she says. Do whatever she says." Dr. Jameson hesitated for only a second before the authority in Patricia's voice and the desperation in Marcus's face convinced him. "What do we do?" "Ketamine, 2 milligrams per kilogram, immediately. It will relax the laryngeal muscles enough to reduce the spasm. Then racemic epinephrine via nebulizer to reduce the edema. And heliox instead of oxygen. The helium-oxygen mixture will flow more easily through the restricted airway." Patricia's hands never stopped moving, positioning Christopher's head, clearing his airway, her voice steady and calm even as her heart raced. "And someone get me high-dose IV methylprednisolone. We need to stop the inflammatory cascade now." The medical team exploded into action, nurses running for medications, residents adjusting equipment. Patricia stayed at Christopher's side, her hand on his chest, feeling each labored breath. "Come on, baby," she whispered. "Stay with us. Just stay with us." Marcus stood frozen, watching this woman he had dismissed, this woman he had humiliated, fight for his son's life with a skill and determination that none of his expensive specialists had shown. The ketamine went in first. Patricia watched Christopher's body slowly relax, the terrible arching easing. Then the epinephrine, misted into his lungs through a nebulizer. The heliox flowed through a specialized mask that Patricia adjusted with practiced precision. 30 seconds passed. A minute. 2 minutes. The room held its collective breath. And then, slowly, miraculously, Christopher's color began to improve. The blue tinge faded from his lips. His breathing, though still labored, became more regular. The panic in his eyes eased. He was going to live. Dr. Jameson exhaled shakily. My God, that actually worked. Patricia didn't take her eyes off Christopher, monitoring his response, adjusting the oxygen flow, checking his vital signs with the instinctive competence of someone who had done this 1,000 times. He's not out of danger yet. We need to maintain this protocol for at least 12 hours and watch for rebound inflammation. He'll need close monitoring and... How did you know? Marcus's voice was barely a whisper. How did you know what to do? Patricia finally looked at him, and in her eyes, Marcus saw something that made him feel smaller than he had ever felt in his life. Not anger, not triumph, just quiet, steady humanity. Because I'm a nurse, Mr. Sterling. I've spent my entire adult life learning how to save children's lives. She paused, and the weight of her next words settled over the room like snow. It's what I was trying to tell you 3 days ago when I asked for a job, but you were too busy laughing to listen. The room fell silent. Every doctor, every nurse, every person present understood what had just happened. This woman, dismissed and humiliated, had just saved the life of the man who had rejected her. Marcus's legs gave out. He sank into a chair, his face buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking. Pride, shame, gratitude, and horror warred within him. I'm sorry, he choked out. God, I'm so sorry. Patricia turned back to Christopher, checking his IV line, adjusting his pillow. Your son is stable. Dr. Jameson can take over from here. I need to go. I have an appointment at the charity clinic. She started to leave. Wait. Marcus stood, stumbling slightly. Please, wait. Patricia paused at the door but didn't turn around. I don't... Marcus's voice broke. I don't know how to thank you. You saved his life. He's everything to me. He's all I have left. And you, after what I did to you, you didn't have to help. You could have walked away. You should have walked away. Patricia turned slowly. Her eyes were tired, so tired, but they held something that Marcus had never truly understood before. Grace. Mr. Sterling, when a child is dying, you don't walk away. You don't care who their father is or what he did to you. You don't think about revenge or justice or getting even. You think about saving a life because that life matters. Because every life matters. She paused. Even yours. Even mine. Even that little boy's. We all matter. Let me make this right, Marcus said desperately. Please. The job you wanted, it's yours. Any position in my company. Name your salary. I'll pay off your debts, your rent, whatever you need. Just please. I don't want your guilt money, Mr. Sterling. Patricia's voice was firm but not unkind. I want you to understand something. The reason I needed that job wasn't because I'm lazy or incompetent or unqualified. It was because the world you live in, the world of glass towers and expensive suits, doesn't see people like me. You don't see our skills or our experience or our humanity. You see a problem to be removed. She took a step closer and Marcus found he couldn't look away from her eyes. Your son is alive because of 20 years of experience you couldn't see. Because of knowledge you didn't value. Because of a humanity you dismissed with a laugh. Patricia's voice softened. I'm not telling you this to hurt you. I'm telling you this because you need to understand that the people you ignore, the people you dismiss, the people you call this problem, we have value, we have gifts, we have something to offer this world. And maybe, just maybe, we might be exactly what you need when everything else fails. Marcus couldn't speak. Tears ran down his face unchecked. I need to go, Patricia said quietly. My daughter needs medication and the clinic only takes 20 patients a day. She walked toward the door. Mrs. Williams. Dr. Jameson stepped forward, his expression transformed by respect. Would you consider staying? We could use someone with your expertise on staff. I can arrange an immediate hire, full benefits, competitive salary. Patricia stopped, turned, looked at the doctor with surprise. We've been short-staffed in pediatric intensive care for months, Dr. Jameson continued. If you have the credentials you mentioned, I can have you credentialed and working by tomorrow. This hospital needs nurses like you." For the first time since entering the room, Patricia's composure cracked. Her eyes filled with tears. Her voice trembled. "I would be honored." "Then it's done." Dr. Jameson extended his hand. "Welcome to St. Catherine's, Nurse Williams." As Patricia shook his hand as relief and gratitude washed over her like a wave, Marcus Sterling watched and understood that he was witnessing something he had never truly seen before. Redemption. Not his own. He hadn't earned that yet. But hers. The redemption of a woman who had maintained her dignity through humiliation, who had chosen compassion over revenge, who had saved a life even when she had every reason to walk away. And Marcus Sterling, standing in that hospital room with his son breathing steadily behind him, finally understood what his wife had tried to teach him all along, that we are all human, all deserving of respect, all capable of both tremendous cruelty and extraordinary grace, and that sometimes the people we need most are the ones we see least. 3 weeks later, Patricia Williams walked through the doors of St. Catherine's Hospital wearing scrubs that actually fit, her name badge clipped to her chest, her head held high. The pediatric intensive care unit had become her domain once again, and she moved through it with the confidence of someone who had finally found her way home. Maya's medication was covered by the hospital's employee health plan. The eviction notice was a distant memory, replaced by the security of a steady paycheck and the promise of a future that didn't involve constant fear. Patricia had even started saving money, something she hadn't been able to do in 3 years. But the most unexpected change wasn't in her circumstances. It was in Christopher Sterling's room. Every day since his recovery, Marcus Sterling had come to the hospital, not just to visit his son, but to watch Patricia work. He sat in the corner of the pediatric unit, silent and observant, watching her comfort frightened children, explain complex medical procedures to worried parents, train younger nurses with patience and expertise. He was learning to see. "Mr. Sterling." Patricia approached him on the Tuesday of her 3rd week, her tone professional but not cold. "Christopher is being discharged today. You don't need to keep coming here." Marcus looked up from the chair where he'd been sitting for the past hour. He looked different, still wealthy, still powerful, but somehow diminished. Or perhaps Patricia thought simply more human. "I know," he said quietly. "I wanted to talk to you before we left, if you have a moment." Patricia checked her watch. Her shift ended in 20 minutes. "I can give you 5 minutes." They walked to a small consultation room, empty except for 2 chairs and a window overlooking the city. Marcus closed the door and stood there for a moment, as if gathering courage. "I've been thinking a lot these past 3 weeks," he began. "About what you said, about not seeing people, about dismissing humanity." He paused, struggling with words that clearly didn't come easily. "You were right. About everything." Patricia waited, saying nothing. "I grew up poor," Marcus continued, and this admission seemed to cost him something. "Did you know that? I grew up in a trailer park in Alabama. My father was a drunk who beat my mother. We survived on food stamps and charity. I wore the same pair of shoes for 3 years until they literally fell apart." He looked out the window, his jaw tight. "I swore I would never be poor again. Never be powerless again. Never be the person standing outside in the rain begging for scraps." His voice dropped. "So I built an empire. I made myself untouchable. And somewhere along the way I became the person I hated most. I became the man who looks at desperate people and sees only problems to be removed." Patricia felt a flicker of understanding, though it didn't excuse anything. "When Christopher was born," Marcus continued, "Sarah, my wife, she tried to keep me human. She dragged me to charity events, made me volunteer at soup kitchens, forced me to see the people I was so determined to ignore. And I resented her for it. I thought she was naive, soft, unable to understand how the real world worked." His voice broke. "Then she got sick. Stage 4 cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to death. And in those 6 months I watched her suffer with more grace than I've shown in my entire life. She never complained, Never asked why. She just kept loving. Loving me. Loving Christopher. Loving everyone who came into her hospital room. Tears rolled down his face now unchecked. The night before she died, she made me promise something. She made me promise to teach Christopher to be kind, to see people, to use our wealth to help, not to insulate. Marcus laughed bitterly. I promised. And then I spent the next 3 years doing exactly the opposite. I kept Christopher isolated. I surrounded him with specialists and tutors and nannies, but I never let him see the real world. I never let him see people like you. He turned to face Patricia directly. You saved my son's life, but you did something more than that. You showed me that I've been failing him in every way that matters. You showed me that I broke my promise to Sarah. And you showed me that the people I've spent years dismissing, people like you, are exactly the people who make the world worth living in. Patricia felt her throat tighten. She hadn't expected this. This raw, honest vulnerability from a man who had seemed incapable of it. I don't deserve your forgiveness, Marcus said. I know that. But I want to ask you something anyway. Not for me. For Christopher. What is it? Would you consider being his friend? Marcus's voice was tentative, almost childlike. Not his nurse, not his employee. Just someone in his life who can show him what real strength looks like, what real dignity looks like. Someone who can teach him the things I clearly can't. Patricia studied him carefully. Mr. Sterling, I'm not a charity case. I'm not a moral lesson for your son. I'm a person with my own life, my own daughter, my own struggles. I know that now. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. That's why I'm not offering you money or opportunities or anything transactional. I'm just asking if you'd be willing to let Christopher know you. As a person, as a friend. He held out the envelope. Patricia opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter on childish notebook paper. The letters large and uneven. Dear Mrs. Williams, my dad says you saved my life. Thank you. He also says you have a daughter named Maya who is 16. I am 7. That means she is more than twice as old as me, which is a lot. My dad says I should make friends with people who are different from me. You are different because you are nice, and also you know how to help people breathe. I am different because I have asthma and braces on my legs sometimes. Would you and Maya want to come to dinner at our house? My dad says he will not laugh at anyone or be mean. He promised. I made him promise 3 times. Your friend, I hope. Christopher. Patricia felt tears burning in her eyes. She looked up at Marcus, who was watching her with an expression of desperate hope. He wrote that himself, Marcus said softly. I didn't tell him what to say. He keeps asking about you, about whether you're okay, whether your daughter got her medicine. He wants to know you. Patricia folded the letter carefully and slipped it back into the envelope. I need to think about this. Of course. Take all the time you need. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. Mr. Sterling, can I ask you something? Anything. That day in the rain, when you laughed at me, did you even see me? Did you see a person standing there, or just an inconvenience? Marcus closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, they were filled with shame. I didn't see you at all. I saw a problem, an obstacle, something in my way. He paused. I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover what I owe you, but I am sorry. More than I know how to say. Patricia nodded slowly. The fact that you can admit that, that's a start. A small start, but a start. She left him standing there, the envelope still in her hand, Christopher's hopeful words pressing against her palm. That evening, Patricia sat at her kitchen table with Maya, the letter spread out between them. Her daughter read it twice, her expression thoughtful. He sounds sweet, Maya said finally. And lonely. He is both of those things, Patricia agreed. Are you going to say yes? Patricia sighed, running her fingers over the childish handwriting. I don't know, baby. Part of me wants to protect us from that world. from people like his father who can hurt us so easily. But his father already changed, didn't he? Maya asked with the clarity that teenagers sometimes possess. I mean, he admitted he was wrong. He's trying to be better. Isn't that what you always tell me matters most? Not whether we make mistakes, but whether we learn from them? Patricia looked at her daughter. 16 years old, wise beyond her years, shaped by hardship into someone who understood grace better than most adults. When did you get so smart? Maya grinned. I learned from my mom. Patricia picked up the letter again, reading Christopher's words one more time. I made him promise 3 times. She thought about the boy watching from the window that rainy day, seeing what his father couldn't see. She thought about his question. Why were you mean to that lady? She thought about a 7-year-old child with more moral clarity than the billionaire who raised him. And she thought about Sarah Sterling, a woman she'd never met who had spent her final days trying to teach her husband to be human. Okay, Patricia said softly. We'll go to dinner. Once, and we'll see what happens. Maya's face lit up. Really? Really? But Maya... Patricia took her daughter's hand. Remember, we're not going there to be fixed or saved or turned into some kind of moral lesson. We're going as equals, as friends, if that's possible. And if at any point it feels wrong, we leave. Deal? Deal. 2 days later, Patricia and Maya stood outside the Sterling penthouse, both dressed in their nicest clothes, not fancy, but clean and dignified. Maya clutched a small potted plant they'd bought from a street vendor, her contribution to the dinner. Marcus opened the door himself. No butler, no staff. Just him wearing jeans and a simple shirt, looking more nervous than Patricia had ever seen him. Mrs. Williams, Maya, thank you for coming. Please come in. They stepped into a home that was beautiful but somehow sad, all expensive furniture and perfect decoration, but lacking the warmth that makes a house a home. Christopher appeared from around a corner, moving slowly with a single leg brace, his face breaking into a huge smile when he saw them. You came. You really came. He rushed forward, then stopped himself, suddenly shy. I'm Christopher. You must be Maya. Do you like plants? I like plants. We have a garden on the terrace. Do you want to see it? Maya smiled, charmed despite herself. I'd love to. As the children headed toward the terrace, Marcus gestured Patricia toward the living room. Can I get you something to drink? Coffee? Tea? I made dinner myself. Well, I tried to. It might be terrible. I'm not much of a cook. Patricia saw the effort he was making, the vulnerability of serving a meal he'd prepared himself, of opening his home without the armor of wealth and staff. Coffee would be nice, she said. They sat in the kitchen, not the formal dining room, and Marcus poured coffee with hands that trembled slightly. Through the terrace doors, they could see Christopher showing Maya his collection of succulents, both children laughing at something. Thank you, Marcus said quietly, for giving us this chance. For giving me this chance. Patricia wrapped her hands around the warm mug. Mr. Sterling. Marcus, please, just Marcus. Marcus. She corrected herself. I'm not here to absolve you or to make you feel better about what happened. I'm here because your son asked, and because children deserve adults who try to do better. I know, and I am trying. He paused, searching for words. I've been going to therapy, talking about why I became the person I became, about my father, about poverty, about the walls I built to protect myself that ended up just isolating me from everything real. Patricia nodded, saying nothing. I also started going through Sarah's things. She kept journals. Did you know that? Years of them. And in the last one, the one from when she was dying, she wrote about me. His voice cracked. She wrote that she was worried I would forget how to be human after she was gone, that I would use my pain as an excuse to hurt others, that I would teach Christopher to be powerful instead of kind. He pulled out a worn journal and opened it to a marked page, turning it so Patricia could read. I'm afraid for Marcus. Not because he'll fail to take care of Christopher, he'll give him everything money can buy, I'm afraid because he's forgotten that the most important things can't be bought. Love, empathy, connection, the ability to see another person's humanity, especially when it's inconvenient. I pray that something will wake him up, that someone will show him what I can't seem to show him anymore, that being powerful doesn't mean being invulnerable, that real strength comes from acknowledging our weakness, that we're all just human beings trying to get through this life, and the only thing that really matters is how we treat each other along the way. Patricia felt tears slip down her cheeks as she read. This woman, this dying woman, had seen everything so clearly. You were that someone, Marcus said softly. You woke me up, not because you tried to, but because you showed me, in the most painful way possible, what Sarah had been trying to tell me all along. He looked toward the terrace where the children were still talking, their laughter floating through the open door. I can't change what I did to you. I can't take back that moment in the rain or the years I spent being exactly the kind of person Sarah feared I'd become. But I can try to be better. I can try to be the man she believed I could be. I can try to teach Christopher what she wanted him to learn. Patricia set down her mug and looked at Marcus. Really looked at him. She saw the guilt, the grief, the genuine desire to change. But she also saw something else. The long, difficult road ahead of him, the work he would have to do, the lifetime of learning to see people instead of problems. Changing is hard, she said finally. It's harder than making money or building empires or any of the things you've already accomplished. And it doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happens in 1,000 small choices, every single day. I know. Do you? Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. Because it's easy to feel transformed when your son nearly died. It's easy to be humble when you're scared. The real test comes later, when life goes back to normal, when you're comfortable again. Will you still see me then? Will you still remember this lesson? Or will it just become a story you tell at charity dinners? The time a black nurse taught you to be human. Marcus flinched at her words, but he didn't look away. I don't know, he admitted. I want to say yes. I want to promise that I'll be different forever. But the truth is, I don't know if I'm strong enough. I don't know if I can unlearn 40 years of self-protection and cruelty. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised even herself. Then let me help you. Marcus looked up, startled. Not because you deserve it, Patricia continued. Not because I forgive you. I'm still working on that. But because I made a promise to myself a long time ago that I would use my gifts to help people. All people. Even people who hurt me. Even people who have to learn the hardest lessons the hardest way. She leaned forward, her eyes holding his. Your son is watching you, Marcus. Every day, he's watching to see what kind of man you're going to be. And other people are watching too. Your employees, your business partners, everyone in your orbit. You have a chance to use your power and your wealth to do something real, something that matters, but only if you're willing to stay humble, stay teachable, stay human. Marcus's throat worked as he struggled with emotion. How do I do that? Patricia smiled slightly. The same way everyone does. One day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of seeing people instead of problems. From the terrace came a shriek of laughter. They both turned to see Christopher and Maya covered in soil, having apparently knocked over a large planter, both of them giggling helplessly. Oh no. Marcus started to stand, his face reflexively tightening with worry about the mess, about appearances, about control. Patricia touched his arm gently. Let them be kids. Dirt washes off. Joy is harder to come by. Marcus stopped, sat back down, took a breath. And then, remarkably, he laughed. A real laugh, not the cruel, dismissive sound from that rainy day, but something genuine and warm. You're right, he said. You're absolutely right. And in that moment, watching two children play in the dirt while their parents sat together over coffee, something shifted. Not dramatically, not completely, but enough. Enough to begin. enough to hope. Enough to believe that people, even people who had hurt each other, even people from different worlds, could find their way toward something better. Together. 2 years later, the transformation was no longer invisible. The Sterling Foundation, once focused exclusively on high-profile donations to museums and universities, had quietly restructured. Under Patricia's guidance as Director of Community Health Initiatives, they had funded 7 free medical clinics in underserved neighborhoods, created a scholarship program for single mothers returning to school, and established a job training center that had placed over 300 people in meaningful employment. But the real changes were smaller, more personal, and far more profound. Every Tuesday evening, Patricia and Maya had dinner with Marcus and Christopher. Sometimes at the penthouse, sometimes at Patricia's apartment in the Bronx. Marcus had learned to navigate public transportation to get there, much to his staff's bewilderment. The dinners were simple, loud, and filled with the kind of genuine laughter that had been absent from Marcus's life for years. Christopher and Maya had become unlikely but devoted friends. The teenage girl tutored the now 9-year-old boy in reading, while he taught her about plants and astronomy. Christopher's health had improved dramatically, not just physically but emotionally. The isolated, frightened child had blossomed into a curious, compassionate boy who asked questions about everything and everyone. And Marcus Sterling had become someone even he didn't fully recognize. He still ran Sterling Industries, still made millions, still wielded enormous power, but he wielded it differently now. Every major decision went through a simple test. Would Sarah be proud of this? Would Christopher see this as strength or cruelty? Would Patricia call him out on it? Usually, the answer reshaped his choices. On a cold November morning, Marcus stood in the lobby of what had once been an abandoned warehouse in the Bronx. Construction crews were putting finishing touches on what would open in 2 weeks as the Sarah Sterling Memorial Hospital, a fully staffed, state-of-the-art medical facility offering free and reduced-cost care to anyone who needed it. Patricia stood beside him reviewing the final plans, her voice steady and professional as she pointed out modifications to the pediatric wing. "We need wider doorways here for wheelchairs," she said, marking her tablet. "And the waiting room should have toys, not just magazines. Children shouldn't have to sit in silence and fear when they're sick." Marcus nodded, making notes. 2 years ago, he would have hired someone to handle these details. Now, he understood that the details were the entire point. Mrs. Williams, a young woman, approached hesitantly, clutching a folder. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to thank you. You helped my son last year when he had that asthma attack at the clinic. The doctor said he wouldn't have made it if you hadn't been there." Patricia smiled warmly. "I remember Julio. How is he doing?" "He's thriving, running track at school now, because of you." The woman's eyes filled with tears. "You gave me my baby back." As the woman walked away, Marcus watched Patricia's face, the quiet satisfaction, the genuine joy in another person's healing. This was what Sarah had tried to teach him. This was what he'd spent so long refusing to see. "You do that a lot," he said quietly. "Do what?" "Save lives. Give people their children back. Make miracles look ordinary." Patricia gave him a look. "It's not a miracle, Marcus. It's just medicine, and compassion, and showing up." "That's exactly what a miracle is," he replied. Later that afternoon, Marcus stood in his office at Sterling Industries, the same office where, 2 years ago, he had offered Patricia guilt money, and she had refused it. His assistant Jason knocked and entered, looking uncertain. "Sir, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Security wants to know if they should—" "Send her in," Marcus interrupted. He had a policy now. Anyone who came to his building asking for help got 15 minutes of his time. No exceptions. The woman who entered was young, maybe 25, black, wearing a janitor's uniform with a name tag that read, Keisha. She looked terrified. "Mr. Sterling, I'm so sorry to bother you. I know you're busy, but I didn't know where else to go." She spoke quickly, words tumbling over each other. "I work in this building, 3rd shift, cleaning crew, and I have an idea for a better cleaning solution that's less toxic and costs less, and I wrote it all up. But my supervisor laughed at me and said I should focus on mopping floors, not thinking, and She stopped, realizing she was rambling. Fear and shame crossed her face. I'm sorry. This was stupid. I shouldn't have come here. Marcus stood, and for just a moment he saw her as he would have seen her 2 years ago, an inconvenience, a problem, someone in his way. Then he saw her as Patricia had taught him to see, a human being with ideas, with value, with something to contribute. Keisha, he said gently, please, sit down. Tell me about your idea. Her eyes widened in shock. You want to hear it? I do. Take your time. I'm listening. 20 minutes later, Marcus was reading through Keisha's surprisingly detailed proposal, complete with cost analyses and environmental impact studies she had researched on her own time. It was brilliant, implementable, potentially revolutionary for the entire facilities management industry. This is excellent work, Marcus said, looking up at her. Truly excellent. Can I ask you something? Why didn't you submit this through proper channels? Keisha's face tightened. I tried, sir. But people like me, we don't get listened to through proper channels. The supervisors, they see the uniform and that's all they see. They don't see that I have a degree in chemistry. They don't see that I'm working this job to pay off student loans. They just see someone who's supposed to be invisible. Marcus felt something crack in his chest. The familiar, painful recognition of his own past behavior reflected back at him. Keisha, I want to offer you a position in our research and development department. Full benefits, salary commensurate with your education and skills. And I want you to lead the implementation of this cleaning solution across all Sterling properties. He paused. But before you answer, I need to tell you something. He told her about Patricia, about the rain, about his son, about the moment he learned that the people he dismissed were the people who could save him. Keisha listened, tears streaming down her face. 2 years ago, I would have had security escort you out, Marcus finished. I would have laughed at you the same way your supervisor did, and I would have lost the chance to see your brilliance, just like I almost lost my son because I couldn't see Patricia's humanity. He extended his hand. So yes, I'm offering you this job, but more than that, I'm apologizing. For every time someone like me made someone like you invisible. For every laugh, every dismissal, every moment we chose power over humanity. I can't change the past, but I can try to do better now. Keisha shook his hand, unable to speak through her tears. As she left, still in shock, clutching a formal offer letter, Patricia appeared in the doorway. She had been waiting outside, having come to the office to discuss the hospital's opening ceremony. I heard, she said simply. Marcus looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something that hadn't been there 2 years ago. Peace. I'm trying, he said. Every day I'm trying to see people, to really see them. Patricia crossed the room and did something she had never done before. She hugged him. A brief, warm embrace that spoke of forgiveness earned through action, of transformation witnessed, of hope fulfilled. Sarah would be proud of you, she whispered. And so am I. The opening ceremony for the Sarah Sterling Memorial Hospital was held on a brilliant Saturday morning in December. Hundreds of people gathered, community members, medical staff, journalists, and city officials. But the moment that mattered most wasn't captured by cameras. Christopher Sterling, now 9 years old and walking with only a slight limp, stood at the microphone with Maya beside him. They were unveiling a plaque in the hospital's main entrance. Christopher read the inscription in his clear, young voice. This hospital is dedicated to the memory of Sarah Sterling, who taught us that true strength comes from seeing every person's humanity, and to Patricia Williams, who showed us that the people we most need are often the ones we see least. May everyone who enters here be seen, be valued, and be healed. The crowd applauded, but Christopher wasn't finished. He looked directly at his father, standing in the front row, and added words that weren't on the plaque. My dad used to be someone who didn't see people. He told me that. He said he was scared and angry, and he forgot how to be kind. The boy's voice was steady, mature beyond his years. But then Mrs. Williams saved my life, and he remembered. He remembered that we're all just people trying to get through life, and the only thing that really matters is how we treat each other. Christopher smiled. My mom wrote that in her journal. Mrs. Williams showed it to me, and I think it's true. I think that's the most important thing anybody can learn. In the audience, Marcus Sterling stood with tears running down his face, not caring who saw them. Beside him, Patricia Williams held Maya's hand, her own eyes shining with tears. This was the legacy. Not the building, not the money, not even the lives that would be saved within these walls. The legacy was the understanding, passed from Sarah to Patricia to Marcus to Christopher, that humanity is not a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be embraced. After the ceremony, as people toured the facility and marveled at its beauty, Marcus found himself standing alone in the pediatric wing. He looked at the small beds, the cheerful murals on the walls, the toys carefully chosen to bring comfort to frightened children. Patricia found him there. "You okay?" she asked softly. Marcus nodded. "I was just thinking about that day in the rain, about how close I came to missing all of this." He gestured at the hospital, but they both knew he meant something larger. If Christopher hadn't gotten sick, if you hadn't been there, if I hadn't been forced to see— "But you were forced to see," Patricia interrupted gently. "And you chose to keep seeing. That's what matters. Not the moment of crisis, but everything that came after, the work, the change, the daily choice to be better." "I still fail sometimes," Marcus admitted. "I still catch myself thinking the old way, seeing problems instead of people." "We all do," Patricia said. "The difference is you stop yourself now. You course correct. You keep trying." They stood together in comfortable silence, two people from different worlds who had found their way to understanding. "Thank you," Marcus said finally, "for saving my son, for saving me, for being patient with my transformation." Patricia smiled. "You saved yourself, Marcus. I just showed up at the right moment. The rest was all you. And Christopher, he keeps me honest." "Children usually do," Patricia agreed. "That's why we have to listen to them." Through the window, they could see Christopher and Maya in the hospital's garden, planting flowers for the spring. The boy was teaching the teenager something about soil pH, gesturing enthusiastically, while she listened with patient affection. "They're good for each other," Marcus observed. "They are," Patricia agreed. "She's learning to be patient. He's learning to be brave. They're teaching each other what we sometimes forget, that differences make us stronger, not weaker." Marcus watched his son, healthy and happy and becoming the kind of person Sarah had dreamed he would be. "Do you think she can see us, Sarah?" Patricia considered the question seriously. "I don't know about heaven or angels or any of that. But I know that love doesn't disappear just because someone dies. I know that the things she taught you, the hope she had for Christopher, the kindness she modeled, all of that lives on in what you're doing now. So maybe that's how she sees us. Through the good we do because she believed we could." Marcus felt the truth of her words settle over him like grace. "I have something for you," he said, pulling an envelope from his jacket. "Before you protest, it's not money. It's something else." Patricia opened the envelope and found a handwritten letter. Marcus's handwriting, careful and deliberate. "Dear Patricia, 2 years ago, I stood in the rain and laughed at your humanity. Today, I stand in a hospital named for my wife and built because you refused to let me stay blind. You didn't save my son out of kindness or forgiveness. You saved him because it was right, because he was a child who needed help, because you are fundamentally incapable of walking past suffering without trying to heal it. You have taught me more about strength, dignity, and grace than I learned in 48 years before I met you. You have shown me that real power isn't control, it's connection. That real wealth isn't money, it's relationship. That real success isn't rising above others, it's lifting them up. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the second chance you gave me. Not through grand gestures, but through daily choices, through seeing people, through remembering that every human being has value, has gifts, has something to teach me if I'm willing to learn. Christopher asked me last week what I wanted to be when I grew up. I told him I wanted to be like you, someone who saves lives not because it earns recognition, but because it's who I am at my core. Thank you for standing in the rain. Thank you for refusing my guilt money. Thank you for demanding I be better. Thank you for being exactly who you are. With profound gratitude and respect, Marcus Patricia folded the letter carefully, her hands trembling slightly. You didn't have to write this. Yes, I did, Marcus said, because some things need to be said, need to be witnessed, need to be remembered. Patricia looked at him, this man who had been so broken, so lost, so cruel in his fear, and saw someone transformed, not perfect, never perfect, but striving, growing, becoming. You're going to be okay, she said. You and Christopher both. You're going to be okay. Because of you. No, Patricia corrected gently. Because you chose to change. I just showed you that change was possible. 5 years later, Christopher Sterling was 14 years old, healthy and strong, serving as a youth volunteer at the Sarah Sterling Memorial Hospital. He wanted to be a doctor, he said, so he could help people the way Mrs. Williams had helped him. Maya Williams had graduated from college with honors, funded by the Sterling Foundation Scholarship Program, and was in her first year of medical school. She came home every holiday to volunteer at the hospital alongside Christopher, the two of them still best friends despite the age difference. Patricia Williams had been promoted to Chief Medical Officer of the entire Sterling Foundation Health Network, overseeing 17 clinics and 2 hospitals. She still worked shifts in the pediatric unit when she could, never wanting to lose touch with the hands-on care that had always been her calling. And Marcus Sterling had become something he never imagined possible. A man known not for his wealth, but for his humanity. He spoke at conferences about corporate responsibility, funded research on healthcare accessibility, and most importantly, raised his son to see people, all people, as worthy of respect and dignity. The story of what happened that rainy day spread quietly through the medical community, then wider. Not as a feel-good tale of redemption, but as a challenge. How many other Patricia Williams are standing in the rain right now? How many brilliant, capable, essential people are being dismissed, laughed at, turned away? And more importantly, what are we going to do about it? On the 5th anniversary of Christopher's near-death experience, the 4 of them gathered for dinner at Patricia's apartment, still the same apartment in the Bronx, though she could have afforded to move a dozen times over. She chose to stay, rooted in her community, living proof that success doesn't require abandoning your origins. Over Maya's famous lasagna and Christopher's attempted apple pie, better than last year's but still a work in progress, they talked and laughed and remembered. Do you ever think about that day? Christopher asked suddenly, his teenage voice cracking slightly. The day in the rain? Sometimes, Patricia admitted. Not with anger anymore. More with, I don't know. Gratitude, maybe? Gratitude? Maya looked surprised. For being humiliated? For being seen, Patricia corrected. Eventually, for being given the chance to show that my humanity wasn't dependent on someone else recognizing it. And for meeting all of you, even if it took a crisis to make it happen. Marcus set down his fork. I think about it every day, every single day. It's the moment my life split into before and after. Before, I was successful, but hollow. After, I started becoming human again. You were always human, Dad, Christopher said softly. You just forgot for a while. But Mrs. Williams helped you remember. Patricia reached across the table and squeezed the boy's hand. We helped each other remember, sweetheart. That's how it works. We're all just walking each other home. As the evening wound down, as Christopher and Maya cleared dishes while debating some obscure medical fact, as Marcus and Patricia sat together in comfortable silence, a sense of completion settled over the room. This was the miracle, not a single dramatic rescue, but the slow, steady transformation of lives. The ripple effect of one woman's dignity, One man's humility, one child's clarity, and one teenager's grace. The story didn't end with Patricia saving Christopher's life. That was just the beginning. The real story was in everything that came after. The daily choices, the persistent growth, the gradual dismantling of walls built by fear and pain, the recognition that we are all connected, all worthy, all deserving of being seen. As Patricia stood at her window later that night, watching the city lights flicker like earthbound stars, she thought about the woman who had stood in the rain 2 years ago, desperate and dismissed. That woman was still here, still fighting, still believing in human dignity even when the world denied it. But she wasn't alone anymore. She had family, chosen family, built through crisis and grace. She had purpose, using her gifts to heal, not just bodies, but systems, communities, lives. And she had hope, the kind that comes from witnessing genuine transformation, from seeing that people can change, that cruelty can give way to compassion, that the arc of the universe does sometimes bend toward justice. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Thank you for dinner. Thank you for everything. Sleep well, my friend." Patricia smiled and typed back, "You too. See you Tuesday." Tuesday dinners. Simple, ordinary, sacred. This was the legacy. Not monuments or buildings or newspaper headlines, but the quiet, persistent choice to see each other's humanity, to honor it, to protect it, to celebrate it. Every Tuesday, every day, every moment, one person at a time, one choice at a time, one act of dignity and courage and grace at a time, building a world where no one has to stand in the rain, begging to be seen, because we're all finally learning to truly see each other. And in that seeing, we are all saved. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to never miss stories of courage and justice. Like if you believe dignity matters. Share to inspire someone who needs hope today. Your voice counts.